Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing 1, 2, 3. Hello, YouTubers. Author William R. Douglas here to tell you and show you how to have up to 21 Amazon keywords for your novel. I found this out by accident. I want to share this with you. First, I want to go over a couple things. First of all, this is my debut novel, The Death and Resurrection of Baseball. It's a futuristic novel set in the year 2166. Baseball has died as a sport as a result of waning popularity much earlier, and then 100 years before the start of the story, in the year 2061, a second American Civil War puts what's the proverbial nail in the coffin as baseball breathes its last breath at the outset of the war. So that's my story, my first novel, and so far so good. It's getting good reviews, and I got a really good one here from Reader's Choice. It's on my description page. So if you're a baseball fan, would really appreciate your support. I am self-published, and one reason why I'm making this video is because I'm self-published and trying to help other self-published authors get more exposure for their book. So we've all seen this screen setting up your Amazon keywords when you go to first list your book. These are technically optional because Amazon crawls your book title, your subtitle, and your book description when trying to figure out keywords to index your book under. And these additional keywords that are optional are meant to help narrow down search engine possibilities to display your novel in the search results. So I went through this initially back in early May when I published my book, and had a whole different set of keywords here. Had an initial burst of sales, mostly I think from family and friends buying it, and I think maybe some from keyword search results, but things kind of quieted down, and I found out about this product called Publisher Rocket. If you don't have Publisher Rocket, I would strongly advise you get it. It's a great tool that helps take a lot of the guesswork out of the whole process of coming up with your keywords for this optional window here. Now, one thing I did was when I published my book, I had 3 formats. I had Kindle, paperback, and hardcover. And Amazon tells you in their help page that if you have a book available in different formats, physical, audio, that you should keep your keywords and description across formats. So in other words, 3 identical sets of everything for your Kindle, your paperback, and your hardcover. And I'll touch on Audible a little bit later on. But anyway, in any event, so I followed that advice and was not happy with the results later on in the summer. So then I started messing around with Publisher Rocket again and came up with a different set of keywords and tried those. And then I had a couple that were different depending on the format. Had some success, but thought I would do an even deeper dive into the research of coming up with the keywords. And I just last week published, I don't want to say published, but updated my book description, which allows you to also update your keywords in KDP, and I was able to successfully put 21 different keywords into KDP. And I'll show you what I did. I came up with a spreadsheet that I used in conjunction with Publisher Rocket. Now, my book is primarily a book about baseball, and the hero is a 12-year-old boy who gets involved in finding a relic that has a tie back to the game of baseball. It hasn't been played for 100 years in his time, in the future. When I was studying keywords, I came up with a couple of major sets. Obviously, baseball is one keyword, but reviewers were using the word dystopian to describe the novel, so I embraced that keyword. Also, young adult is a very popular category, even amongst older adults, as far as book categories go. So I utilized that keyword and a couple of other ones as well. And I did a lot of research using Publisher Rocket. If you've never used Publisher Rocket, I'll show you an example here. Here's Publisher Rocket. I'll do a new search. Let's say we want to do a keyword search on the word or the phrase Babe Ruth. Babe Ruth makes an appearance in my book. Go get 'em Rocket. And this shows up keyword phrases that Amazon has of record where people were looking for information about Babe Ruth. And so you're presented with this screen. All these dots or dashes are placeholders for metrics that you can bring up if you choose to analyze a particular keyword. So we'll analyze the first one, Babe Ruth, because that's the one I entered. And the metrics get populated into the fields. What we see is that the average Babe Ruth book is 205 pages. There's 1,087 books that Amazon has related to Babe Ruth. The average price is $12 per copy. And for the best sellers, the average monthly earnings is $565 per month. But here's where things get interesting. These last two columns are the really important ones you got to focus on when determining which keywords to use. Now, two things. Some of the other pundits on YouTube that talk about setting up your keywords advise to stick with a keyword phrase that has usually 1,000 searches per month. So as you can see, this one has less than 100 searches per month for the phrase Babe Ruth, but yet there's 1,000 competitors. This score number that Publisher Rocket gives is numbered 1 to 100. 100 being the most competitive number, and number 1 being obviously the least. Now, what they tell you in their tutorial is that if you're a first-time author and you've got a new book out, you should avoid picking any keyword phrase that is above the number 40. Again, above the number 40. So you see this number is 60, and it's in the moderately competitive category. Numbers above, I think 80, are in the extremely competitive. And unless you're a well-known author and you have some bestsellers under your belt, you should avoid picking a keyword that ranks with a red button. I think it's, like I said, I think it's 80 or higher. But the best ones would be 40 or lower. So, if we get on here, let's take a look at this one, Babe Ruth in books. Aha. We see this one has low competition, which means there's a higher likelihood that when people type in the phrase Babe Ruth in books, that your book is going to show up in the search results and hopefully be looked at by the potential customer. Now, this one doesn't have 1,000 searches per month, but it's still a fairly decent number considering the competition is really low with only 1,000 books. Um, and then um, or not KDP, Publisher Rocket also recommends that you pay attention to this competitor number because some books will have multi thousands in a particular category of keyword, and so obviously that is hard to break through, especially if you're a debut author or just have one or two or three books or whatever. But in any event, so when I made my spreadsheet, I started doing all these researches on these various keyword phrases based upon the bigger categories like young adult or YA, futuristic, baseball, dystopian, coming of age, so on and so forth. And what I did was, when I was all done, I had about well over 100. In this column, if it was red, which I believe is 80 or higher, if it was red, I deleted them all together because, again, as a new author, the chances of you breaking through into a category that's red are pretty remote. So I took the advice from the tutorial on Publisher Rocket, and I kept all the greens, which are 40 and lower, and the yellows. I made one exception. This one has a 41, so I made that a green, but all the other ones being yellow. And then what I did was, if you go and color coded the searches per month, I categorize those. Obviously, here's ones that are less than 100. I made those red. Um, and then the ones that were 1,000 or more, I made green. There's a couple here that showed up as yellow on Publisher Rocket, and they coded it as yellow on Publisher Rocket, even though they had over 1,000 results. But when you look at the keyword, it has over 1,200 competitors. So maybe that's why they did that. But in any event, so I did all this, and then I took a step back. I the Kindle users are slightly different than the paperback or hardcover users. In fact, there's even some categories for keywords where they had the word Kindle in the keyword that showed up on Publisher Rocket. So what I wound up doing, and this is how I got 21 different phrases, was I wound up picking 7 keyword phrases that I dedicated to the paperback edition of my book. And then I dedicated 7 separate keywords for my hardcover edition of the same story. And then 7 yet again different keyword phrases for the Kindle edition of my story. So so far, I think it looks like I had a little uptick in sales, but I've got some room to keep playing around with this and make some additional changes as I see fit. But the good news is that when I did this, Amazon did not complain that I was using different keywords, even though it was the same title, but three different ASIN and ISBN numbers. And that's the good thing. So the logic here is that, you know, uh, Kindle readers are younger typically, and they might be more drawn to dystopian stories. And so I loaded that up in my keyword window for the Kindle version. And then there was actually, for the hardcover, there was actually a category, baseball stories hardcover, that had low competition. Not a lot of searches, but a decent amount per month at 1,600 a month. So I threw that in there for the hardcover. Um, and then, like I say, Amazon did not complain. So my description is the same. I kept that the same, and but each format has a different set of keywords. So at least in theory, that broadens the user base or potential customer base would be a better phrase, because you have someone looking for a dystopian book could potentially land on my novel. You have someone specifically looking for young adult new releases that could land on my novel. You have uh, baseball stories, obviously, as well. And with this spreading out of these different keywords based upon the format of the book, again, at least in theory, it could attract more potential eyeballs to the landing page for the book, and hopefully the book description pulls them in and they make a purchase. So that's my story on how you can get up to 21 keywords for your book, assuming, of course, you have Kindle, paperback, and hardcover. And I don't have audio yet, so I'm guessing the Audible setup is somewhat similar, and that when I finally get my Audible version of my book, I could potentially expand from 21 to 28 Amazon keywords. So, hope this helps. If it does, hit like, and more importantly, I would really love your support if you buy a copy of my book. Thank you.